The funeral arrangements, like where the former president will be buried and the type of funeral, are still being finalized, according to the SABC source. Family members and government officials are expected to depart for Singapore on Monday ahead of the repatriation of the former leader's body. Mugabe died in a hospital in Singapore on Friday. His remains are expected to arrive at the Robert Mugabe International Airport in Harare on Wednesday. It will then be transported to Kutama, his home village in Zimbabwe. For the people of Kutama, the former Zimbabwean president was their own. In March, an SABC News team visited the area and spoke to the village elders.
Mugabe is my brother. His mother and my mother are sisters.
Other people are saying he was cruel. He was beating people, he killed people.
He killed people, Robert.
He killed people? Robert? No.
The youth also shared their views.
I grew up here in Kutama village. President Mugabe is our uncle. He was a great man.
I remain indebted for all time to Fort Hare. Anyone who wanted to pursue his or her secondary education had to go down south. And that's why many of us during those days who had sponsorship or had parental support went to South Africa, to places like Adams College, Marion Hill, many others in South Africa. Tiger Clovis one, Lovedale another.
Meanwhile, for those who were with him at Fort Hare University in South Africa, the late leader was always an activist.
We were students together at the university, and also later, when I became minister, I would go to Zimbabwe to talk with my counterpart in Zimbabwe, and we would meet, and he would joke with me about how I was rusticated from the university for my political activities and so on. He always regaled me with that. And therefore, and then he came to South Africa to a SADC meeting, and because I had criticized him, I went and greeted him, and he said, "Why are you so hard on me?" and of course, I just smiled too because of the kind of relationship that we had with him.
Reaction to his legacy has been mixed. But at this village, former President Mugabe remains their hero. Sophie Mokoena, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Well, you see her now in that package, but our foreign editor, Sophie Mokoena, joins us now in the studio for the latest. You've been covering events since the announcement was made on Friday of the passing of the former president of Zimbabwe, President Robert Mugabe. What has been the sentiment so far, especially about the mixed legacy of this giant?
Well, clearly we knew that if the eventuality happened, definitely people will have different views around former President Robert Mugabe. You will have those who are really supporting him and who are saying he's a hero, as President Emmerson Mnangagwa has done by declaring him as a national hero, and the expectation will be that he is buried at the Hero's Acre. You have a situation where you have people who are allegedly are victims of the so-called sponsored terror by the former president, but also the killings in Matebele land. People feel that he was involved, and he must take responsibility. Therefore, you have a different reaction depending on who you speak to.
We see in the news today that the people in his village where he retired to say he was a very bitter man towards the end. Have you also gotten that sense?
Well, you would recall that, Desiree, the first interview he did after leaving office, I was there and I spoke to him. Yes, he was very clear, he was very angry, He felt that his comrades betrayed him. He was very bitter. You know that even on the eve of the elections in Zimbabwe, he called a press conference. I was there, where he uttered the famous words that I will never vote for those who tormented me. But then there are new reports that apparently later, when his party or some of the party members spoke to him, he indicated that at night he had to really think deep in terms of what he was going to do the next day. Therefore, we don't know. I mean, in terms of voting, it's a secret, and the only person who knows what to do at that moment is a voter. And we don't know whether he did vote for ZANU-PF or MDC, but on the eve of the election, the message was clear: I will not vote for those who tormented me. But later, during the passing of Grace Mugabe's mother, when Grace Mugabe's mother died, the government did help the family. And it then looked like there was synergy, and also two families, particularly the Mnangagwas and the Mugabes, trying to mend the relations. But we don't know, because most of the time they were in Singapore.
Do we know how the family is and what the progression is in terms of funeral arrangements?
Well, yesterday the government issued a statement to all the diplomats indicating that they are inviting heads of states from Africa, and they must arrive on Friday. On Saturday, the national funeral or memorial will be held in Zimbabwe, in Harare, and they must leave the same day, because on Sunday they will be busy, or government officials will be busy with arrangements for burial. According to government, he is going to be buried at the Heroes Acre on Sunday, but there are also other reports indicating that some family members feel strong that he must be buried at Kutama. And fortunately, in March, when President Ramaphosa was in Zimbabwe, a day before he arrived, I went to Kutama just to get some material in that place, and I spoke to villagers there, the senior people, and most of them who are related to former President Mugabe. They really want him back in that village, and they still respect him. And he's got a big house there in the village, well maintained, and he does visit, he used to visit the village at some point in time. And also we spoke to young people there. They also feel that he is a hero, and they really associate and identify with him. And we don't know. So I think the final decision will be between the family and government officials who are leaving today to Singapore. And I think, of course, Grace Mugabe and the children will give a direction. It's not clear yet. And you spoke to one of the family members, the former Minister of Mining, and I think at 11 o'clock, should you be fortunate to speak to him, he will give an indication, because he's in Singapore.
So, as a foreign editor, do you get the sense that this is going to be one of the biggest funeral services to be held in Africa? Of course, juxtaposing this against the dire economic situation in Zimbabwe at the moment, and one gets the sense that they might not be able to afford to put out an extravagant
I think the government is going to try to ensure that it is really done in a proper way, befitting Mugabe. But the problem is the family and the relations between the family and government. That might affect the arrangements, but I don't think it can surpass former President Nelson Mandela's funeral, because there was synergy between the family, the government, the international community. So I think the biggest funeral for me, it's still former President Nelson Mandela's funeral. I don't know what's going to happen to former President Mugabe's funeral, but I expect most of heads of state from the continent. With Madiba, it was a number of people coming from different countries, not only on the continent, but also outside South Africa. I would recall that during the memorial, we had people like Barack Obama and the former President of Cuba, Raul Castro, and that historic moment, the handshake that led to the negotiations and America taking a soft stand against Cuba, but the situation has since changed under the administration of Donald Trump. So I can't really speculate.
Do we know what's going to happen in the interim until Saturday?
Well, we do know that today the family and government officials will be flying to Singapore. They are expected to arrive tomorrow, and I think they will then leave Singapore tomorrow with the family and the body. And the body is expected to arrive at Robert Mugabe International Airport on Wednesday, and the body will be taken to the countryside, Kutama, where he comes from, and it will be there. It's not clear whether it will be then brought to Harare on Friday or Saturday morning for official funeral, and then of course it will remain there until Sunday for the burial at Heroes Acre, if the family and government have agreed. But what I do know is that government officials are leaving today, and that the body is likely to arrive back in Harare on Wednesday, and it will definitely be taken to Kutama, the home village, and then official funeral on Saturday, burial on Sunday.
I suppose we'll watch developments as they happen. Thank you so much for making the time this morning, our foreign editor, Sophie Mokoena. Let's take a break.